lot of people think that it costs a lot of money to make bonsai trees, and it can. It certainly can, but it doesn't have to. There are lots of ways to get bonsai trees absolutely free, and not just garbage trees either. So today I'm going to share with you 7 different ways that I've gotten bonsai trees completely free. And I mean legally, like not sneaking by after dark, taking somebody's tree, not going to the nursery and dropping $200 and saying, hey, since I'm buying all these trees, can you throw that one in for free? I'm talking about trees that cost absolutely nothing. And I'll show you the trees that I've gotten using one of these 7 methods. Cheers. Now, not every beginner starts with this phase, but a whole lot of bonsai beginners do, and that is they want to grow their own bonsai from seeds. It's Liquidambar, sweetgum. I take the green ones and I stick them in a box until they open up. And these are perfectly viable. You can grow a bonsai tree out of them. Maple is another one that's really easy to grow from seed. Here's one of the maples that I've grown from seed. It's starting to bark up. It's starting to get a little bit of girth on it. It's starting to get some nabari. But that started as a seed maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Not much more than that, if it's more than that. So this oak, grown from an acorn that I got for free. Chinese elm is so easy to grow from seed. You don't even have to plant them. They just land. I like coming back to this tree here. This was an elm seedling. It was grown from seed. I let it get up to like 18 inches tall, cut it back severely. It's going to be a cool little shohin sometime soon. One that's not so easy, a bunch of ficus. Not every fig or ficus, I think, has this problem, but most of them do. There's a specific type of pollinator, a wasp or something, that's native to wherever these are native from. Juniper's almost as hard because to get these seeds to germinate, you have to stratify, cold stratify, and then hot stratify, and then cold stratify. And then, I'll show you in a second, even if you manage to stratify them correctly and they sprout, it's not the best way. It's just inefficient and takes more time, and it's not a better tree. Okay, so here is an example of why I don't recommend growing junipers from seeds. This is feminine juniper, right? So this is a feminine juniper struck. This is a cutting that I struck about 8 months ago. This is a juniper cutting that I struck about 1 year and 3 months ago. This is a juniper grown from seed, about 1 year and 8 months old. Yeah, not a great comparison. The method I use the most for making free trees is cloning. And there are 2 main ways to clone trees. One is to make cuttings. And my favorite way of making cuttings are root cuttings. And not every species will allow you to make a good tree from a root cutting, but some do. You can Google your species and add the word root cutting, to the search and find out. Chinese elm is particularly good at root cutting. So what you do is you just, when you're pruning, you prune off a root. You separate it, you rebury the root, you leave a little tiny bit sticking out of the soil. And in this case, I left a lot sticking out of the soil. And right here is where I pruned the root off of the main plant. And above it, sprouted a tree. Same over here. This is where the root cutting occurred, and it sprouted a little tree. Now you can also do air layers, and of course cuttings are the easiest and probably by far the one that I do the most. Now you have to ask permission, of course. You're taking a cutting that's not yours. This is a cutting of hibiscus that I really like from one of my neighbor's trees, and I was like, hey, can I come snip like 6 little tiny branch tips off of the back or the middle of your tree? And he's like, yeah, sure. And I got this and a couple others because of it. That's cool. I also have, let's see, over here, there's, it's kind of hard to get into it. There we go. A church I go to has an adjoining property with a big old bush of cotoneaster that encroaches onto the church parking lot property. And I asked the church if it was cool if I trimmed that back for them and took the trimmings away, and they were, of course, perfectly happy to let me do that. Most of the plants on my cutting shelves, however, are cuttings of stuff in my yard. This, the tree from my first YouTube video, is a cutting. It grew from, you know, a tiny little piece of tree. I let it grow up to about, I don't know, 1.5 feet tall. Started digging up at the bottom, and then I chopped it back down again, and I've now made like 6 other clones of it, if not more already. And once you have a few trees in your collection, it's really easy to take trimmings and strike cuttings out of them. Here are some cuttings I just took, and here's an example of a tree that I'm growing from a cutting. So this is an air layer. This was taken off of the top of a different boxwood, a larger boxwood. And the cool thing about air layers is a lot of times that gives you an opportunity to start with kind of a fat trunk on kind of a short tree. A lot of times you can get free trees locally from like Nextdoor, these, you know, neighborhood apps, or from Craigslist. Craigslist Free often has people that are offering free, sometimes potted plants, sometimes cuttings, sometimes you dig them, you keep them. In fact, one of the things that's most common for you dig it, you keep it free Craigslist is, at least in my area, Bougainvillea. Hey, come dig out these thorny, massive Bougainvillea, or even these thorny little Bougainvillea, and it's free. So I've answered a lot of ads, and I'd forgotten about this until recently, but and we haven't done it in a while, but we used to actually place ads in Craigslist saying, hey, if you've got a hedge that you want removed, send us a picture, and you know, we might come take it out for you for free. This isn't my best ficus, but I got this one for free too, Craigslist. I got this for free from answering an ad. Somebody was just ripping out their boxwood hedge, put an ad on Craigslist Free saying, free boxwood hedge already removed. They pulled it out with a chain tied to a pickup truck. And I just showed up, and it was the end of summer. It was like the first, maybe even the second week of September. And these things have been sitting out in the sun with the roots exposed for hours. By the time I got there, I took like 12 of them, and they've turned out to be kind of cool trees. This is another Craigslist ad. I had to drive like 20 miles from my house to get this one, but this boxwood is, I mean, that's a good 7 or 8 inches wide at the base. You know, the trunk is pretty good size, and it's really tall. I can get several trees out of this. I'm going to air layer this. Bringing that one home was kind of funny because it has it's got spider webs all over it. And so I didn't want that inside my vehicle and have a bunch of spiders popping out, you know, at random places and times. So I got a trash bag. Normally I would get a trash bag for the roots at least. But for this one, I had the trash bag for the roots, And then I pulled it up as high as I could, which was about to, halfway. And then I took another trash bag and covered the other half of it because it needed to go in the back of the truck for the ride home. I didn't want it to dry out. And so it definitely has survived the transplant. And I'm going to get a bunch of trees out of it. And eventually, after I've air layered down, this is going to be the top of the tree. So the front's going to be somewhere around here. Sadly, this branch will probably go. That'll be my first branch. My second branch will be back here, over here. I've got this as a leader, and I'll do a massive trunk chop, and it will be short and stout. It'll be great. Totally free. So one of the things that I did after seeing a bunch of ads on Craigslist offering, come pick up, this plant for free, that plant for free, I put ads out saying, if you want to remove a hedge, send me a picture, and if it's something that we can use, my bonsai club and I will come remove your hedge and leave everything broom swept clean at no cost. And we got a few responses, and we went out and did a few club digs at people's yards, and this is one of the trees I got from it. A very old boxwood, had been in the ground for decades, and it cost me nothing. So here's an example of a tree that I got for free at a club raffle. Okay, and by that I don't mean I got it for free after buying raffle tickets. I mean, at the end of the raffle, it was sitting there. Hold on a second. Yeah, I didn't like that. After the raffle was over, it was sitting there. Nobody wanted it. And the club president said, if anybody wants any of the stuff left on the table, you can go ahead and take it. And I looked at that and I saw potential. Boom, absolutely free. Didn't necessarily, I bought raffle tickets, but didn't necessarily have to have bought a raffle ticket to get this one. A lot of times being in a bonsai club, so it costs money to be a member of a bonsai club, but once you're in the bonsai club, and the cost is small, it's like, most of them in like $25 to $40 range annually. But a lot of clubs go out on digs, and you can collect wild material with the club, or even landscape material with the club. This is an example of a tree I dug in, oh God, it was like 10 or 11 years ago with Harry Harrao out in the Mojave Desert. A California juniper that I've done nothing with. Need to work on this tree. This is another club dig. There's another YouTuber like 10 years ago did a video about the dig from which I got this tree. This is a big old prostrata juniper, had been in the ground for decades. And I managed to collect, we collected these late in July 27th. I can't remember what year. But I remember it was July 27th. And I've kind of neglected it a little bit, but it's still alive. And I've grafted some Itoigawa, and the graft took very well. And so now I'm getting Itoigawa foliage on one section of the tree. I'll probably clip some of this foliage and try and graft it elsewhere on the tree next winter. But for now, yeah, completely free, huge trunk, and now really cool foliage taken off of one of my other existing Itoigawas. Here's something that somebody in the club just gave me for free. My friend John gave me this. It's an accent plant. It's a dwarf geranium. Very cool. Here's another plant that someone in the club gave me. This was from my friend Chuck. And Chuck got kind of tired of looking at this tree and wasn't sure what he wanted to do next with it. So he said, see what you can do with it, Mike. And I'm still working on it, Chuck. And believe it or not, government giveaways can be a source of free bonsai. Now, this will vary from place to place and from time to time. And it kind of feeds into my last category, which is being an opportunist. But in my area, among other things, there have been government giveaways of native plants, just little seedlings that people wanted so that they could add native trees to their yard landscaping. And the government thought it was a good thing to encourage, and so they were giving away free seedlings. Another program we had here about, it's got to be at least 6 or 7 years ago now, but we had severe drought in California for a while, and they were paying people to rip out their lawns. And so I tore my lawn out of my backyard because we didn't really do anything with it other than mow it. And they gave us, I don't remember exactly how much. It was a lot. It was at least $1,200. It was maybe a lot more than that. And you could spend it on removal of turf, on drip irrigation system parts, as well as plants, as long as the plants were on their approved lists. And among the things that were on their approved lists, these green Japanese mound junipers, aka Procumbens, and Bougainvillea. So I planted a bunch of Bougainvillea in my yard, and they are thickening up. They've got all kinds of weird twisty movement. I haven't been doing anything other than pruning them back and letting them grow the way they want to grow. And I've had them in the ground for more than 5 years, which means I've complied with the terms of my rebate. And if I wanted to, I could pull it out of the ground and not owe them the return of my rebate money. Woohoo! There was another government program for a while too. I didn't get any of these, but they wanted to get rid of invasive species. And so, like, one of them was tamarisk, salt cedar. There are a lot of places where tamarisk is considered invasive, and they would let you go on to, in fact, their private property where they'd allow this as well. If you wanted to go take out a stand of salt cedar, they would let you do it. My favorite way to get free trees is to dig them up in the wild. I think that if it's made available legally to you and you're not a pig about it, it's a great thing. And my favorite thing to collect in the wild is California junipers. Now, depending on where you're at, it may be very easy to collect things in the wild. It may be very difficult. You should definitely not do it unless you've got permission. There are a lot of ways to get permission. This particular juniper was on a piece of private property that was going to be bulldozed, and we got permission to take out all their California junipers. This was very close to Lake Matthews in Southern California. And the only reason we actually did it, the trees weren't that extraordinary, but we wanted practice digging these things up and keeping them alive. And so this is one of the trees I dug up from the place in Lake Matthews. Most of them lived, which was encouraging, and then went out to the Mojave Desert and got permission a while later to get some as well. And there are different places, the government sources, I know that I've got people watching this from all over the world, so I can only speak to my experiences in the US. National parks are untouchable. There are some species that are untouchable. California juniper is actually relatively common. There are millions of these things. In fact, they had a big fire at Lake Isabella a couple years ago, and I mean, like, tens of thousands of these things just burned. I'm like, oh, I could have collected those before they burned and they wouldn't have gone to waste. But the Bureau of Land Management will sometimes give permission to dig. State forests and national forests, depending on where you're at, will sometimes allow you to get a forest products permit. Those are often not free. They're usually nominal though, $5 or $10 per tree. You usually have to tag the tree, but sometimes you can actually collect a certain number. Like, there are certain places where you can get up to 10 live trees or up to 5 live trees or something like that. And it's by far where you get the most interesting material. So this one is California juniper I collected from the desert. I had permission from the government to do so. And although the most recent time I tried to get permission, it cost a couple bucks. This one I had received a permit that actually had no cost whatsoever. Doesn't always come for free with frog though. I just got lucky on that one. They don't have to be great big things either. This tiny little California juniper is one that I collected from the wild. And that's eventually going to be a shohin California juniper. And sometimes just be an opportunist. This is more of an accent plant than a bonsai, but I did get all of these for free. I got them from my mother-in-law's. She had a corner of her yard where it smelled like some of the neighborhood kids were coming around and doing some stuff that they shouldn't be doing. It turns out, no, she just had one of these things planted in a corner. It's called, among other things, a lobster flower. And I'll let you Google and find out what a lobster flower smells like, but it smells like something, probably make it an interesting companion to, say, a dank looking maple tree. But you let people know that you're into bonsai and plants and stuff, and sometimes they'll either give you stuff or tip you off to something, or there's all kinds of different ways that you end up with free plants because you're keeping your eyes out, and or you're letting people know that you're into that sort of thing and they're keeping you in mind. So this is in a 15-gallon container, so you can tell it's pretty big. This is a Bougainvillea that I rescued out of the back of a truck after some garden crews had ripped out some Bougainvillea bushes that had been in the ground for like 30 years. And so they cut it down to stumps, then tore the stumps out. I managed to get 4 stumps that had roots, and 2 of the 4 are doing really well. This is one of the 2. This is a Japanese maple. That someone gave me because I did them a favor and they wanted to repay the favor. And because people know that I'm into this sort of thing, she thought, hey, you want a Japanese maple? And I said, sure, thanks. So I got this one, and there was another one that wasn't as healthy. It didn't do well. But this one, I'm gonna air layer off probably 3 trees off of it. And sometimes the serendipity is just, making a bonsai out of something that's laying around your own garden. So this is my my boxwood, my oldest tree in my collection, Milo, which was up on my hill for more than a dozen years before we turned it back into a bonsai. And then this last one came from my parents' yard, and they obviously know that I'm into this sort of thing. So when they were taking out their olive in the backyard to replace with a avocado tree, they said, can you make a bonsai out of the stump? And I said, probably. Let's take a look. And so took it home, sawzalled the bottom of it, put it in a giant growing container, and there you have it. So I've got more than like 500 trees in my collection, and I probably have only purchased maybe, I don't know, 100 of them. And I mean, they eventually become cool little trees. The freebies don't always start out as, show-worthy trees, but the price is right, and it's a lot of fun to work on them. Because for me, bonsai is more something to do than something to have. So, getting a steady supply of trees to work on and change and make better, and it's pretty cool. When I was in college, we used to say the only thing that tastes better than good beer is free beer. The same applies to bonsai. The only thing better than great bonsai is free bonsai, at least when you're starting out. And most of the trees I have in my collection are free. Most of the trees I add to my collection are free. Like, I buy a couple of trees a year now. This does not have to be a rich man's hobby. It really doesn't. It's fun and it's free. So get out there, get some free trees. Enjoy. Cheers. Thank you for watching. Stay cool.